So let me close on this, which is kind of thinking about broader international security implications. I think the first, which I'm kind of this is my broken saw, is power projection for everyone. The United States, China, Russia, everyone is potentially far harder and more difficult in a world with proliferated missile forces. Because it's going to be a lot easier if you actually take the right steps based on the technologies that are available today. Your ability to shut down someone while they're in motion trying to invade just goes up radically. You can deny them air cover. You can deny them amphibious or naval approaches. You can hold their ships at risk. You can hold tank columns at risk. I mean, you can do so many cool things that we only kind of dreamed of in the 1980s. Plus, for a guerrilla campaign, you can distribute what are called guided rocket, artillery, mortar, and missile systems. So, Evan and I have been talking about this. This is kind of our dream for 10 years. But imagine Hezbollah on steroids, or Hezbollah with precision-guided mortars and missiles, where very small squads of just a couple guys, a la the Wolverines and Red Dawn, can go out and wreak havoc against armored columns invading a country. The related point to that is, I know this is kind of a non-proliferation crowd, and I'm all about non-proliferation in general, especially when it comes to WMD and the delivery systems for WMD. But I would ask you just is all proliferation bad? Because when I can think especially about shorter range anti-ship missiles, when I think about shorter range land attack systems and other things, especially for kind of frontier defense, if you will, for a country maintaining its sovereignty, I think they actually look pretty doggone stabilizing. That they're not really, there are different classes here, and don't get me wrong, intermediate range surface-to-surface missiles, I think theirs are likely to create security dilemmas. They lead to crisis instability. They're bad. Having anti-ship cruise missiles and batteries along your coast that can reach out, 100 kilometers, I don't think that's such a bad thing. That might actually be stabilizing. It's a pain in the ass for us if we want to invade you. But overall, for the international system, I don't think it's that bad. Evan hit on the cost point, and I think cost is going to be a bigger limiter in the future than arms control regimes are going to be. And that may be kind of a contentious point. But again, as we were saying earlier, range is going to remain pretty doggone expensive. And there are going to be big opportunity costs in terms of how much of this stuff do you want to pursue at the expense of more efficient systems, especially if you're worried about a potentially protracted conflict. And the last point, which is maybe the most complicated, and I'm going to screw it up, is you've got to think over the next 10 to 20 years about kind of an evolution in the competition. That we're going from single-shot missiles and demonstrations to salvos, and how you defend against salvos, or how you kind of limit the damage from salvos. The next step in that, as Evan was talking about, in terms of how you go after the kill chain, the critical aspect is going to be, we're in this kind of blinding campaign race where we're each trying to counter the command and control communications and intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance complexes of the other. That, rather than me trying to go out and fly swat each missile coming in, I'm going to try to destroy your kill chain while trying to preserve my own. That in turn, if you kind of imagine both sides getting really good at that, eventually you say, well, the hard thing to go after with a kill chain is something that moves. So increasingly, I'm going to fall back to holding things at risk that don't move. What are things that don't move? Well, they tend to be kind of counter value in nature. So we may be going into a renaissance in counter value targeting. Okay?
Can I use that phrase? Renaissance. It sounds so pleasant in grinding people up in large numbers.
Sure.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So take that. Maybe if that's the case, then where does that take you? And so at the far end of my 20-year outlook, I think it takes you in a couple directions. One is resiliency matters a hell of a lot. City-states don't look very secure to me. If you're Israel and you're small, if you're Singapore and you're small, I think you're in real trouble. If you're a country like Australia, big landmass, but you've concentrated your population in only 5 cities that can all be held at risk, that doesn't look so good either. Countries that look most resilient, actually are countries kind of like China and the United States. Population evenly distributed, industrial capacity evenly distributed. They look like they're actually a little more resilient, especially if they make the right kinds of investments. I think it also drives you back towards WMD. WMD. If the shipping costs are getting so damn expensive trying to throw something, 5,000 kilometers range, having some little pinprick, TLAM-like warhead on it doesn't make any sense anymore. So it pushes you back towards most likely nuclear weapons, but you can think about other forms of WMD. And then the last point that I'll close on is, I'm sorry for going on so long, is I think all of this missile stuff actually pushes you towards strategies of circumvention. That you'll go through, you have no choice but to join the missile arms race, if you will. But you want to avoid overspending here, just like you'd want to avoid overspending in the strategic offense-defense relationship. But you've got to look at what areas are buying you the most flexibility. And I think here, if you look at like Vladimir Putin's strategy of circumvention in terms of going subconventional, that looks really attractive. And I think other great powers probably follow in suit. Thank you.